welcome back to the show. Many thanks for staying with us. Let's begin the conversation on this. I know we've had a couple since morning, but let's try and break it down, look at the implications, so on and so forth. So basically, if you look at the outlook of this budget review, we're looking at the economy, new tax measures or tax reform, social achievements and infrastructure. Basically, what government seems to have tagged its content under. I have in the studio Raymond Akwa, who will help us with the analysis. Raymond, it's good to have you.
Thank you so much.
Since morning.
Yes.
I need your eye contact.
Oh, wonderful.
Raymond Akwa will help us with some analysis. I'm also here in the studio with Badu-Aboagye, who is CEO of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And most of their members will be very interested in the details of this. You're welcome. Thank you so much for your time. Let me start with you, Raymond. I know you've spoken about it a couple of times this morning, but what would you say are the highlights for you?
Okay, first and foremost, government introduced something that was discussed prior to even the review being done. I mean, the inclination we got was that first, the IMF proposed some measures government ought to take. It included VAT, it included redefining the scope of some of the income brackets to know which grouping to tax. It also included specifically which disposable incomes are available for you to tax, and also which products are you likely to consider in this particular case. It looks like government tested the waters with the VAT part. They realized that there was massive opposition to it, then said, okay, let's withdraw it. Let's look at an alternative way of doing this in a nice way. So that's one area that virtually everybody was interested in. What else are they going to say? One thing that the government also wants to do, it still wants to stay within the 4.5% fiscal deficit range so that it can complete, and you heard the finance minister say that, complete the IMF program and be outside the boundaries of the IMF. So what else were they going to do? You have programs you have to execute. 2, your revenue is not leaning in the direction that you are very happy with. You need to introduce measures to get more money whilst either spending less or spending at the same rate and yet not increasing your fiscal deficit.
So that you don't anger the people the more.
Very good. Now, one thing that they decided to do was a conversion of the National Health Insurance of 2.5% to a straight levy of 2.5%. Now, the history of the National Health Insurance is 2005. When we introduced it, in fact, people even thought that it was introduced as part of the VAT because first government said we have increased VAT separately, and yet we have also brought in 2.5%, which looked like an increase in the VAT then, to add up and make it now National Health Insurance. Because where you are deducting VAT from is vertically where you're getting the National Health Insurance levy from too. So they said that now it's going to be a straight tax. Now, the other thing they're also saying is that...
So hold on, Raymond. If you say they're going to make it a straight tax, and I'm seeing it here, conversion of NHI levy of 2.5 to a straight levy. Can you break it down to somebody who doesn't understand what a straight levy is?
VAT mostly is, for example, you are a producer. Your product in its raw form might cost 1,000 cedis. You add some to it because you added value to it. That's like 500 cedi. Okay. VAT was on the 500 cedi. Yeah. You see the point? Okay. Now they're taking the VAT from the 500 cedi and saying that let's put it on the entire product. Okay. So it's on 1,000 and not the 500 cedi.
So if you have, so on the 500 cedis, if you were to pay, say, 100 cedis,
yes,
off of the 500. Now if it's added to the 1,000,
2.5% on the 1,000 rather.
Okay.
So it depends on the kind of good you are actually dealing with. The impact may be big on the consumer or on the guy who's taking the tax in this case. The idea was that let's not increase the tax in and of itself, but let's find a way of increasing what was existing to take care of it or remodeling it in a way that it affects a grouping, it affects other groupings, and depending on where you, and I've given an example of a restaurant, which is very luxurious. If their value added is bigger than the original cost in this case, then the idea behind adding the 2.5 to the actual product and not the value added may make some sense. But if it's the other way around, then there's still some confusion in the minds of people. Okay. So Kwaku will tell that you're paying something small, but
it depends.
It depends on really the products and the percentage they are dealing with in this particular case.
Raymond, let me hang you on there. I know that you look like you're going into the details for me, but let me just take your highlight as well, Ms. Aboagye. What's your highlight of today's budget?
Thank you very much. For us as a mid-year review, we weren't actually explaining a lot of policies, but For us, the highest point was the fact that the VAT wasn't increased actually, because prior to that, there were a lot of hullabaloo about it, and some of our members called us to find out whether really there was going to be an increase in VAT.
Okay.
People had started even putting themselves together for an agitation. So the moment I heard that the VAT was not going to be increased, I was a bit relieved. For a businessman, even 0.1% increase in VAT is very huge. Tax is very huge. So if you have a situation where there is no increase in tax, I think it's okay. By and large, I think the economy is also doing very well. If you look at the numbers, for inflation, we are close to the target. The fiscal deficit, we are also making an inroads in that. The gross international reserve, I think 3.5 is okay. What for me was an issue was actually the interest rate. The minister actually made mention of reduction in the TB rate, but if you've not seen translation of the reduction in TB rate and the policy rate on the lending rate, actually, the lending rate is still high. So if you have a TB rate which is low, which definitely means that the government is borrowing less, people will not have the incentive to give money to government, but they will rather invest. But the lending rate for a business person from 30 to 35 is so high. I mean, it's about the highest in the whole world, and we can't continue like that. If you look at the sub-region, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and the rest, they have very low interest rate.
Okay, now you're also going into the details, but let me sort of take you back to the fact that he says there have not been any increases in VAT. But from what Raymond explains, it could, depending on the sort of trade you're into, and depending on the amount or the cost of the trade you're into, you could actually end up paying more. Raymond, is that correct?
Yes, I mean, you pay something that, I mean, to enter some purposes, may reflect something even higher than the VAT in other cases.
Exactly. So, are your members concerned about that?
Yes, for me, I think it's an innovative way of generating more revenue, actually. I mean, increasing the VAT, if it's 12%, increasing it to 14.5%. The percentage is high, but this one is a straight one, so you are paying just 2% of whatever the amount is. I don't know whether you understand me. Yeah, so for us, the issue, not that we are against payment of tax anyway, but we were looking for how they are going to expand the tax net, broaden the tax net, so that we bring so many people into the payment of tax.
So does this intervention work for you and your members? It's good?
Yeah, it's good. And for me, one of the highlights is how they were going to improve the efficiency of collection of tax. For a business person, your office is here, they know Joy FM is here. At the end of the day, they look at your numbers, they see if you made a profit of, let's say, 100,000, you pay a corporate tax of 25%, then it's so easy. You are working, your tax is being paid. But the person working on the streets, selling coconuts, rice, and all those, the informal sector, they are making huge sums of money. They're also enjoying whatever we are also enjoying. So there should be a way to make sure that we bring all these people on board. So if it's 5% and everybody is paying 5% across board, it's better than keeping the tax of 20% on one particular company.
Which gives me the impression that you're not particularly maybe excited about 10,000 and what people are going to have to pay. Those who earn over 10,000, what they're going to pay. Raymond, let me allow you to finish with the point you're making earlier, and then we'll look at the area he's getting into now.
So it's an interesting development, I mean, that it brings up too. I do not know whether this would have a sunset clause sometime in the future. So, for example, they can do that we've rated enough revenue in 2-3 years, so we are no longer charging it. Remember that when we brought in the ESLA levies, the idea was that it was a huge chunk was for a period of time. If we get the money, we clear the debt at the energy sector, we are no longer going to charge it. So I want to know whether they are going to put in some of this, because it tells you how the future is going to be like, whether you're going to still be within this regime or revert to the old one, and how that's going to affect businesses too, and those who have planned ahead, let's say for the medium term in their development in this particular case. You talked about the interesting part to do with the 10,000 grouping.
Yes.
Now, it's not just 10,000. That, you see, they are going to pay 35,000 now on the current one. They used to pay like every other. 35%. They used to pay 35%. They used to pay like every other person whose salary exceeds 3,241, 25%. Now, and their salaries, they are in groups. The first group is those who are being paid 261 cedis. The government takes no peso from them. Their cumulative income is still 261, no difference. Now, when you move up to 70 cedi more, you get 5% of the amount. That's 350 pesos, 350 pesos being taken as tax, and that's 5%. When you go up to 100 cedi added to the 261 and the 70, you are getting 10% of your salary being taken as income tax. When you move it up, you are getting, when your salary is up to 2,810, you are being asked to pay 17.5% of that particular salary. That's like 491 cedis. Yes, 491 cedis to government as tax. The last one was the 3,241 group.
And beyond.
And beyond, who are all paying 25%. Okay. Now, government has created another group of rich people and says that you are the super rich. Everybody above 10,000 and beyond that are the ones who are now going to pay 35%. So currently, so in reality, the 10,000 group is actually now paying 10% more because they've been paying 25% already. They've just been asked to pay 10% more to government in this case.
And since you earn 10,000, is that negligible?
Since
you earn 10,000 and beyond, is that negligible?
No, it isn't at all. I mean, to be 10%. Clear, to be clear, already you have 25% going off. You get used to it at a point in time, but it's still something that if you think about the difference between if we were to be there and say if you're 10,000, 25% of 10,000, 2,500 cedi.
Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah, that's huge. Now, it could go up to 3,500 cedi. You see where the slight difference is. So you will not be smiling if we're to be 10%, you will not be smiling about the impact it's going to have on your salary. The idea is that when you take, and the thinking behind some of these policies is that you take from the rich, give to the poor in some way, somewhere. Now, the conflict in thinking around this policy is that for a political party that's libertarian, for a political party that's predominantly capitalist in nature, it's surprising how they want to tax the rich more. Because mostly they want the rich to have some rebates, including businesses, so that they can get more people to work for them.
But how does this affect disposable income? 10,000.
Okay, two things.
That's individuals, right?
Yes, individuals. For example, if these people were employing me, and some people have done it in such a way that my tax is part of the income you are giving me. Yeah. So first, if you are giving me, I'm paid 10,000, but you gave me 12,500 because you wanted to take the tax out and use it to pay my. Now you have to look for more money to pay me inclusive of the VAT of the income tax.
Before you be able to take out that
very
extra
good.
10%.
So that I still come at 10,000 cedi. So that's how it's going to affect industries and other businesses.
Let me bring it in.
I think that is right.
Is that what's going to happen? Because you can't review anybody's salary downwards. That will be another demonstration.
Probably those who will be coming in. I mean, it also depends on your bargaining power. You have already been engaged. So if these things come, you can't just walk and say that because of they are taking 10% additional from my salary. It may happen actually, but I don't think it's going to be an across board just like that.
Has this been a conversation you guys have had at all?
Not really.
Okay, because it was just announced.
As I said, also maybe for individual companies or individual employers as well. For some, I mean, they may take it as, I mean, the year is halfway, so probably let's wait until the year ends. And if we are doing salary adjustment, then we can consider all these things. But for now, those who have the bargaining power, I think they should be able to push for something.
Will this affect businesses in any way, you think?
No, in fact, for business, any costs affect us, affect our bottom line. So even if increasing somebody's salary by 10%, it means your cost of labor has gone up. Your bottom line will also go down by that margin. So, but I don't see any huge impact anyway. But
there's a way that these guys avoid that. Do you know how they do it? So that you don't feel it. They don't say that your income is really 10,000. They'll say your income is like 2,000 or 3,000. Then they say your income is like 2,800, so that will fit into the 70.5 range. Then they'll say that you're taking some allowance for jackets.
Now allowances are also taxed.
Yes, but I mean, yes, they are taxed. But when they put all of this together,
the rates may be different.
The rates are lower than what is supposed to be.
The income tax.
So your 10,000 might be 10,000, but because of
yourself out also to.
He's giving them ideas. Yes, he actually paid for his consultancy, but government has heard.
So the cumulative effect might not be the same as being able to tax it 35%. That's the problem.
But that's a smart way of going about it. So in all, I mean, to wrap up on that particular conversation about the new reforms, I mean, there are levies on luxury vehicles as well. I mean, I don't know. You have people who deal in that kind of business.
Exactly.
What have the responses been?
Well, in fact, I haven't spoken to any of them, but for a levy, whatever it is going to increase. But I think that it also goes to those who can afford. You buy a V8, I mean, it's assumed that, as you said, taxing the rich to compensate for the poor is the ability to pay. So that is what. But for that particular policy, my take was the fact that it's not going to affect commercial vehicles. And for me, that is where an ordinary Ghanaian, whoever it is, will take. So if they are not increasing the levy on that, means relatively the fares are going to be to remain the same. So it's not going to affect them. But basically, we also have to look at how we can also rake in more revenue to help the government. So some of them, I think we have to look at it.
Why do I feel like it's not really sincere? But Raymond, I'll have you speak about the levies on the vehicle, but we've just been joined on the line now by Labour consultant Austin Gami. Sir, thank you very much for your time. Let me take your initial thoughts on this one before I give you my main question. Do you have any initial thoughts?
Well, I think this is a very straightforward issue. It may be difficult for everybody in this country, but it is true also that in any country at all, should there be some misalignment on the economy that may create problems, those in the forefront, like the Minister of Finance and the rest of them, can come out with measures to bring about alignment into the system. And I think that it's normal that people at the top would normally suffer the consequences a little bit more than those down there. And so the generality of the presentation today is that there's not too much. If I have my way and I were to be misused, perhaps some rearrangement could be done, but this is about half for now.
What sort of rearrangement are you talking about?
The point is that those who are earning
over 10,000
Ghana supposed to suffer now 35%. Is that right?
Yes. Is that a good thing?
In the meantime, there is a reason. There is a reason behind this demand on them that they will have to suffer the consequences a little bit more. It is true that 3,500, if it is 10,000, is very high. Somebody's pay, but that is the consequence people at the top will have to face to enable us to have some. Because if you have an alignment in your car, you can't drive it. And so this is what they want us to do.
Let me just find out from you about the thing about reviewing people's salaries. What will this mean for HR practitioners, for example, as far as salaries of persons are concerned? Are they going to, what will be the ideal way to deal with it? To just ask the people to, okay, so we were deducting 25%, now we're going to take 10% extra, so we're taking 35% now. How do they communicate this? Or do they just increase the salary to a certain level that taking out 35% will not in any way affect their take home?
It's a possibility. It's also now we are going to speak maybe strategically, but this is radio. Everybody is going to hear. There are several ways of strategizing and bringing about some alignment in the system. People have been demanding pay increase. Now, if you're going to demand pay increase, you have to look at the consequences. Those who are earning close to 10,000 now, if you are going to be demanding a certain amount of money and it will get to 10,000, you must know that you have to pay tax.
That was not even the point. Well, that's another angle. But then this issue is now if you're earning 10,000 plus and you're already paying 25%, how is the company going to convince people? I mean, I won't be happy if I receive my pay slip and my salary has reduced.
It's not a company. This is government economic measures to bring about some alignment into them. So that you can be able to go to the hospital, you can drive on the road.
Yes, I understand that. I'm talking about how we deal with this. I mean, how HR outfits, for example, will have to deal with it. For people whose salaries are going to be reduced, how will they, I mean, how will they deal with it? Could this result in some sort of legal battle?
No, not at all. This is purely government legal measures, which you and I, as HR enjoy, have no hand in it. Yours is so you are going to ensure compliance. There's nothing legal about it.
But ensuring compliance means that people's salaries may be reduced, right?
Yes, sure. It will be reduced not because the employer is reducing your pay. It's reduced because they've taken 3,500 from your 10,000. That is going straight to GRA and not to the employer.
Let me, Raymond, you seem to have an interjection here.
The crux of this is, and the question she's asking, who should absorb it? I mean, the labor law stipulates that you cannot do things or review my salary to my detriment.
Yeah.
I mean, to make me worse off. In this case, be it through government policy or direct decision by the employer,
there is still going to infringe on that particular
law. So who should absorb it?
Law.
Should it be the worker or the company which is done so for some in times past? Who should absorb this cost?
Absolutely the question. Thank you, Raymond.
I think there is some little bit of confusion there. Let's straighten it. One, the employer has no right to deduct any money that is not legally sanctioned by Parliament or authorized by the worker himself. So the employer cannot do any such deduction according to the labor law. Now, number two, if the employer receives directive from Ghana Revenue Authority that going forward today, you pay your worker anything above from 10,000 and above, let him suffer X percentage. That is tax measure which the employer has no control whatsoever over. But if the employer should call you that I want to reduce your pay to X level, that is the one that you are forcing the person to suffer diminution. That is the language of the law. You are forcing the person to suffer diminution in his income. So you can take it to Labour Commission and you'll be restored.
So it's obvious that it is the employee that is going to absorb this cost, basically.
The employee is the one who must absorb it, not the employer. Now, if there are other means, the employer, because the employer cannot pay tax on your behalf because it will reduce the corporate income tax also to GRA. So it cannot be done.
Okay. Okay.
If for instance, in your case, your pay is 11,000, you are now going to suffer S deduction, and the employer, you want the employer to cushion you by absorbing a certain percentage of the income. If he does that and GRA to catch him up or her up, that company will suffer certain penalty by deliberately pruning down on his own income, for which purpose is to pay corporate tax. That's the way it is.
Okay. Mr. Osingame, thank you so much for your time and for that explanation. Osingame there is a labor consultant there. So it looks like there are various ways that this can be handled. I think I heard him say something like you can reduce the salary. I mean, reduce the salary. Yeah, so it's not 10,000.
His complainer, for example, I mean, if you are demanding a salary increase from, let's say, 9,900 to 10,900, it is in your interest to say, no, don't go there.
Give me here.
As I have said, what some have done in times past to navigate this is we'll give you a place to stay.
Okay, so we'll pay allowances.
Yes, not to you. We are paying your rent for you.
Okay.
But even in that,
yes.
so they are taxed.
Yes, I'm saying that.
But the rates may not be the same.
It's not the same as
the flat that's the point. 10 or 35% that government is demanding. Raymond, there was also the issue about compliance measures. That has been one of the major issues that industry players have raised. You're saying that people are not paying the taxes. There are tax people are not paying. Do they introduce any new measures about how they're going to ensure compliance?
I didn't see new. The things they've said in this particular one, they said they will do it in times past. What I knew, which probably the government has not been touting too much, is the grouping that they put together now to reinforce the uptake in this case. Okay. No, now you're going to see more visible people because they're recruiting more people from the GRA. It's more or less like, they call it the attack force. They'll go from institution to institution. If it's property tax, from property to property, the things that they felt was more expensive to do because they didn't have the numbers to do, they're going to do that more. Again, they are mostly very hesitant in prosecuting people for tax offences.
Yeah, but
they
I
want,
think
they want to,
he
yes,
said that now
that's
they are
what I'm
going
saying.
to sanction
Now,
people, even their own
one thing that
staff.
they are going to do is the port officer, you know, some time ago, 1.2 million related to some 12 people at the Tema port, they were arrested. They're saying that they're going to step up, make sure that they prosecute people who help you to evade tax.
Right.
Again, they're also going to prosecute the person who's evading the tax in this case.
Exactly.
So they're making it more like, now we're not going to let you engage. You say, oh, even though you've not paid, you are refusing to pay, we are going to say that give me 6 months, I wait for a time to be done. They are going to properly take you through the process for you to be dealt with by law, as instead as a deterrent to other people who feels that my workplace may just be locked up actually, and they give me some time to pay. I'll go and negotiate with them, and we have a fine date on that. They're open to that negotiation, but ultimately, if they feel that you are evading tax, they will take you through the right process of law.
Mr. Aboagye, is that the way to go, you think?
Yes, I think so. I think we've been very liberal with some of these things, and it's about time we take drastic measures.
Wouldn't it affect businesses? Because,
no,
I mean, there are some of them who sometimes genuinely have challenges.
The thing is, if you genuinely have a challenge, I mean, you can go to the GRA and discuss it with them. It's better that way. Sometimes they give you some space for you to sort yourself out and come and pay. But if you're having a challenge, give it to yourself and start to play games with them.
And evade tax.
Then the law will actually catch up with you. I think one key thing is the thing that they are also introducing, the tax identification number and the national ID. These are key things that we have been talking about. That if you are able to do this, you'll be able to identify each and every person within the country that is supposed to pay a tax and go to them and collect the tax.
Okay.
Now it's difficult. I mean, if I give you direction to my house, you may not even locate me.
Well, there's a Ghana Post address system.
Post,
it's also on
GPS.
board.
That's supposed to be part of this plan.
Part of the whole
That's
plan.
supposed to help
identification
track
better.
people.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So that they
I
can
mean, we
pay
started
tax
this identification long ago.
Yeah.
For first time, over 15 years. And we've still not been able to do it. We are still struggling to do it.
So it looks from what you both are saying that in terms of tax compliance measures, we're on the right path. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that the suggestion?
I'm more interested in waiting to see the outcomes.
Okay.
Because you see, we've tried in times past to put in some of these programs and to say that we'll crack the whip.
And today, Raymond, we were just listening to the men at Aboagye who were saying that there's serious issues at the port.
Yes.
So government is, on the other hand, is saying that we're making money. I mean, the paperless thing is helping us. We're making money. But the people at Aboagye are saying, look, we're having issues here.
Yeah. The crux of their issues, and I've seen that happen on so many occasions, is also because, for example, previously, they were using a different criteria determining how much you pay as an import levy on your imported car. Now, they're using something called benchmark values, which is way higher than what was the case previously. So the expectations of me, myself, and the slight 3% reduction in the import duty does not compare with the benchmark values you are introducing. So it's a drop in the ocean to me when you talk about you reducing taxes. And yet, on the other hand, you are raking in money from my end, and I'm suffering at the end of it. And we know that if you don't pay on time, demurrage becomes an issue, and eventually you lose your product. When you lose your product, you are running at a huge loss too. So it's a very compounding problem that they have to tackle at the port.
So you're waiting for the outcome. Did you have an intervention on the bus levy, the vehicle levy, the luxury vehicle levy that's been imposed now?
Yes. The point I didn't get clear is what's percentage are they imposing?
Because I saw some 1,000 cities, 2,000. I'm not quite clear myself.
The difficulty in doing that, it makes it look like, to all intents and purposes, I mean, what was the option in this case? I was thinking that, one, you made it difficult for people to bring in cars. Two, because they have to pay higher for it. It looks like they're saying that the luxury vehicles are problematic. If it's for emissions and what they call the greenhouse effects, I would agree. Or for consumption of fuel and its related effects, I would agree. But it's becoming the case that merely because you have a kind of vehicle, and let's be clear,
but that comes with those specs.
It's just like the 10,000, the higher level.
Some cars with higher capacity may not necessarily be luxury for a grouping that needs it. So the categorization I have a difficulty
Raymond,
with.
if you are driving a vehicle like this, you should have the money to pay for it.
Oh no, it's not all vehicles that are like this. So that was really but the interesting part is that they say the exempt commercial ones, which is the good part.
You spoke about not being clear about it. So let me read for you what's here. It says imposition of luxury vehicle tax of 1,000 cedis to 2,000 on vehicles with capacity of 3.0 liters and above.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make it clearer for you?
1,000 on what? When I'm doing roadworthy, because I heard that when you're doing registration at the end,
even in the subsequent years, you are going to pay.
Oh no!
So for example, I mean, the guy is going to pay 1,000 every year just because he has a vehicle.
Well, so we're still. These are still clarifications that we need. Is it on the roadworthy? Is it at the ports?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it on your insurance? Is it on your at the point that you paid for?
I think they should just keep it at the port.
If yes, one time. If it's one time, then they don't get the kind of revenue that they want. They want repetitive, consistent revenue.
Exactly. So every year when you renew,
it's something I'll agree to, but clearly
they should keep it at the ports. We'll be wrapping up this conversation, but let's quickly get on the phone lines and speak with Dr. John Gachi, who is an economist. It seems that I lost him, but I can get him back on the line. Raymond, let me take both of your thoughts as well on other areas. They spoke about social achievement, where they mentioned the free SHS, which has been one of the government's trump card. I mean, all over. You heard the guy from Aboagye. He says when you talk about everything you talk about, they say free SHS. Free SHS is not the solution to all the problems.
I think government is actually, at the risk of sounding very different from what they want to hear, being very obsessed with free SHS I am saying that they should be willing to, for example, review the program. They should be willing to take suggestions I've heard from others and views I've heard for a very long time, that it still doesn't make sense to me that the gentleman who is in Presec today, the gentleman who goes on vacation to the United States, whose phone is more expensive than his school fees, get school fees paid for him by the state's money, when we have limited resources, we're not getting the right revenue coming in. It's not discriminatory, it is proper targeting that you do. I can understand why LEAP has a number of people who are on LEAP. There are almost half the number of people on free SHS today. And yet we're able to target LEAP and get the right people to be on LEAP. It is not impossible to get the right people to be on the free SHS so that you get the policy to the people who need it most. Save money. This year, we are going to spend 1.13 billion cedis on not entire SHS educational, on the free component alone. Because that's financing for a component. Exactly. Originally, they were paying some things. Government was also paying other things for them. The tuition part and all of those things are still supposed to be taken care of. Your education budget is predominated by salaries and compensation for teachers and other groups in the education sector. And yet, you think you still need a huge chunk of that money going into such a big block. Now, what we are now doing is that because of a program like that, we all have to now tighten our seatbelts a little bit more for them to get money to fund it.
Which is why, for you who is earning over 10,000, you are having to pay an extra 10%.
But
so
see,
we can help.
So it looks like, that's how taxations work. You take back, you give back at some point in time. But it is possible for them to review some of these policies, which do not have real consensus. And see, Ghana, if you give people free, they'll take all the time. Government does what in political science they call authoritative allocation of scarce resources. And the most important part of it is the scarce resources. Is it the best use you can put your money to?
Right.
Giving it to rich people. Yeah.
Well, let me, if I'm coming to you, then I need to hit on the stimulus package that they're talking about. They say that the Ghana Exim Bank is has set up to provide an amount of 236 million cedis to revamp distressed but commercially viable industries.
For me, that is very key. In fact, these are companies that are given the opportunity, they will do very well. But for some reasons, they are not able to because they lack this financial support. So if government is coming in to support, for me, it's very key. One key aspect of it is also they are working with the bank to give them a subsidy on their interest rate of 10%. But for me, it has taken too long for these things to be done. Over 18 months, I expect that a company that is distressed and is dying and you want to resuscitate it, whatever it takes, you should do it as quickly as possible. If there is, just like Nobel syndrome, the companies are just like that, they are not getting support. If you look at the one district, one factory, I was also very happy, at least the minister made mention of it. Now they have identified 332 companies that they are going to support. I still believe that it's long overdue. They should quickly put these companies in the district that they have identified. Because It's only when we do this that we'll be able to absorb the high unemployed people in the country to be able to get a work. And also, they'll also be paying tax. The companies as well also be paying tax. Okay. Now, products or commodities that we are now importing and putting pressure on our CD, we'll be producing them and consuming here, and then the excess will also be exported. These are good policies that when we implement them, is going to help our economy.
Okay, finally, Raymond, infrastructure. Do you have any other comments on any of the social interventions? In fact, they mentioned school feeding, the LEAP, payments of the allowances to teachers and nursing trainings. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Clearance of debt to NHIS. My question, for example, in the last few months, the most important issue is to do with infrastructure within the hospitals. Yeah. I didn't hear anything on that. Perhaps it's in the bigger review statement, but really, that is key. That is important. We have actually established that it is one of the reasons why people are dying untimely deaths in this country. Because at the point that you need intervention most, you don't get it.
Yeah. So Raymond, let me interrupt you, sorry. So we don't lose Dr. John Gachi. He's on the line. He's an economist. Sir, your thoughts on the new tax policies announced? Yes, sir. If you can hear me, could you please tell us your thoughts on the new tax policies announced? Dr. Gachi, can you hear me?
No, I can't hear you properly.
Okay, is it better now?
Yes.
Okay, I want to take your thoughts on the new tax policies announced.
Well, it's another way for the government to indicate that it's in need of money. So it wants people to pay more in terms of VAT by the convention of the National Health Insurance Levy and then the percentage that goes to GET fund. So definitely that will mean that those people who pay those levies will be paying more to the government. It also means that the desire of government to increase VAT broadly has been limited by the agitation of the people.
What do you make of those who are paying, those who are earning over 10,000 and the fact that they have to pay 10% extra of what they're paying already? Now they're paying 35% from the original 25% of income tax.
Yeah, that is exactly what I'm saying, that all those measures actually mean that government is actually desperate in mobilizing more money.
Okay.
The easiest way to do that was the VAT, which had been blocked by the agitation of the people. Remember, at the time that people complain about erosion of their income, that is the time that you say you'll be slapping or you'll be drawing them more, drawing more from them. So definitely it's a sign that government is actually in need of extra money, and there is no avenue. So that is why it's in these measures to bear.
Well, government
that is the understanding that I have.
That you have. They put out some quite outstanding performance, if you like, of the economy. I don't know if you followed it, but if you did, is it representative of what you would say are the realities?
I don't know what you mean by outstanding performance.
Well, government always touts its performance, doesn't it?
The macroeconomic indicators are supposed to be input that will broader economic benefits. Those broader economic benefits are not actually being experienced. When we have inflation reducing from 15.4% to around 10%, that should have some bearing on prices. But you see that the prices of items that are actually enjoyed by the ordinary person, especially food prices, have gone up in some cases 70, 80, 90%, 100%. So definitely, those indicators are not actually performing their job in proper economic management. So on the statistical basis, yes, it is true that inflation has dropped that much. It is also true that GDP growth is enhanced, but GDP growth, which is not contributing greatly to opportunities to contribute to just revenue generation, that GDP ought to be looked at because it's not inclusive enough. The GDP which is not generating enough jobs, but social intervention programs are generating more jobs than what the GDP is generating. That is also have to be looked at. So we need to question the growth figures. We need to question the performance of the macro level rather than praising it because they have not changed anything much. But that does not mean that one do not recognize that those macro level performance have been recorded.
Have been recorded. Okay. Well, finally, are you as optimistic of the indices as we go ahead as the government is?
Please your point again.
Are you as what do you see going forward? What are your projections going forward about the indices, the economic indices, and the records? Are you optimistic?
I'm not getting the actual question you are asking.
Okay, I'm asking for your thoughts or your projections going forward for the economic indices that have been listed by the government today. Are you as optimistic as to how things will turn out going forward?
So I think we shouldn't be giving verdict. We should rather encourage the managers of the economy that the kind of group we want to do is productive that will generate jobs, that will generate opportunities. With the kind of financial sector we want, is a financial sector that can support the entrepreneurial drive of our people to generate opportunities in business. So long as we are not yet there, we can only encourage them that they should look at the kind of financial sector management they are engaging in. They should look at the kind of GDP growth which is skewed towards natural resources, natural form, which is not generating the desired growth in terms of opportunities, in terms of revenue mobilization.
So thank you.
Approach that I would like.
Right. Okay. Very well. Thank you very much, Dr. John Gachi is an economist. Let me take your views on what he's just said. Raymond, would you like to start? He says that we've got the GDP, we've got the figures, they actually look good, but they're not generating the jobs that we saw as youth or whatever so much craving.
There's a term that I got used to in the last decade. That term is jobless growth, where growth, seriously, economies are supposed to first develop through the agri sector, manufacturing follows, then the other sectors follow up because they provide services at the end of the day. We got a bit messed up along the line. We skipped the huge manufacturing growth part and moved from basically agri straight to service. So industry grows, and because we added oil to industry, we are of the opinion that when the oil influences our growth, we are growing very well. So government is mostly excited when the oil-induced growth shows positive figures. But the entire oil sector, really, how many people are going to be working there? An economy develops better when people can get jobs to do. They can get money, take it home, feed a family, and also be able to spend. Then it spirals into growth of the economy.
So you agree with him? I
agree that we are doing jobless growth. But unfortunately for us, it looks like going to be so for the next 2 or so years, because the IMF in 2016 predicted that the next couple of years is going to have growth, which is predominant on the Sankofa, the TEN, and the other fields that we are developing. We are not taking advantage of that to grow the other sectors, pump more money into it, and make sure that we develop. So Agric is still having some projects. In fact, imagine the projects we've done. We've done Food and Agric Sector Development Program some time ago. We did Fast Step 1, Fast Step 2. Then we brought in MetaSIP to implement the Fast Step. When the new government came in, what it started to do was that, okay, let's abandon all of these and start with our own projects called Plan for Food and Jobs. It might be wonderful, but it is not following on the projects that we started in times past. So real impact on the sector might be fleeting and short term rather than getting it for a long time, so that you can get the industries growing out of the agri sector. Now, it's pretty obvious that when we have our growth, we are only interested in the figure and not what that figure means and how it impacts the rest of the people in the country.
Certainly. You have any thoughts
on
what Dr. Gachi says?
I agree with him to a large extent. I mean, the oil industry is an enclave area, which, employs only few people. But if you take the manufacturing sector, it has a very long value chain, right from whoever is providing the raw material to where we are selling it. At every node, there is employment generated within there. So if you have an economy that the manufacturing sector, the industry sector is not doing well, we are likely to have a growth that is so huge that the GDP we are talking about. But we are going to have this unemployment. So it's important that we give proper attention to the industry, to the manufacturing sector, if we really, really want to solve our unemployment. That's why I was stressing on the one district, one factory. We as a chamber, we are doing a value chain analysis. And it starts from the agri sector to the manufacturing sector. within that note, within just one sector, you can identify over 1,000 of notes and opportunities that will be generated. Let's concentrate on that. Services, fine, is good. They are supposed to provide support services to the agri and the manufacturing sector, but we have jumped into services and we have left this thing, space like that.
I'll take a few Facebook comments so we end this conversation. But just information that's just coming in is what former Finance Minister Tekwe has written. He says Ghana's VAT rate is 17.5%. And Raymond, there's lots of figures here. And I'm going to need both of you to help me understand what Setekwe has written. He says Ghana's VAT rate is 17.5%, and that includes NHIL, which is 2.5%, and Get Funds 2.5%. Removing them from the VAT base and making them specific rates instead of an ad valorem. Oh dear,
yes, ad valorem.
And increasing that rate to earn more revenue, quoting Honorable Kwarteng, is a ruse. It is a VAT increase in disguise. Businesses should not rejoice yet because they cannot claim input tax / credits / refunds on 5% of the current 17.5% rate. Already, he says, the flat rate is denying some registered businesses refunds and input tax credits. The measure amounts to a parallel sales tax regime that the VAT replaced. It is a retrogressive step and further mutilation of the VAT regime.
Let me come to, okay, so ad valorem is because VAT is value added tax.
Okay.
So the tax is really on the addition of value over the period or the at each stage that you're supposed to have it happening. What he's saying is an argument that, I mean, I actually raise more here, that if we do not take care, in the ad valorem process, the producer can actually come out and say that, oh, at this stage we added this to it. We can also claim some money from the tax agencies on that. Unfortunately, for this direct one, you can't do so. So even for the companies and the people in the industry, they may not have it that easy. The crux of the problem I see here is that we need clarity from, you know, when we introduced the VAT flat rate scheme, they brought in practice notes. The practice note says exactly how the VAT is going to run. Let me read something to you. Section 3 of the VAT tax 23870 says, except as otherwise provided in this act, the rate of the tax is 15% and is calculated on the value of the taxable supply of the goods or services or on the value of the imports. The 15% in this case is on the addition, the value. Now, hence, the Get Fund portion, for it to become part of the standalone levy, or for government to make it possible for the NHIL to also stand alone, we need to amend Act 870, the regime that's currently running VAT. We need to amend it so that we can separate it and deal with it with separate practice notes, which is supposed to be the way forward. And of course, what the point is making.
Yes, which is what I was going to come to. So with all this economic English, what is he saying?
He is saying that, please, those in the industry, don't rejoice now.
Because this is
not true that your tax has not been increased or VAT has not been increased. This is backdoor increment. That's what he's saying.
That's what I was, the point I was making earlier.
If you have the VAT, you have the input and output VAT. So at the end of it, your output, what you are paying, you come back to your input. What you have paid to people, you can subtract it from it. That is the
and claim
the input part of it. Now, when you take this 2% or 2.5% out, that portion of that 5% that he's talking about, you can't claim it. Because now it's direct, it's sitting down there, it's ad valorem, it's as a percentage of whatever you have produced. So I understand him that to some
Don't
extent,
rejoice yet.
I mean, but it's better.
But there's a way you can work around it.
Yes, a way we can work around it.
It's better than an increment in the VAT.
Okay, we've run out of time, but let me quickly take one or two comments on Facebook and then we can go. Okay, I'm not having a lot of success with that. But anyway, we'll end the conversation here. I hope that you've had a very, you have something, some sort of understanding, beyond all of those economic words and all of those big figures. Raymond, thank you so much.
Thank you
for your time. Sir, I've been speaking to Mark Badu-Aboagye, who is CEO of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you as well. Don't rejoice so much. That's what Tetekwe is saying. But they say it's better than increasing the VAT anyway.